I'm very excited to be joined by two 3Mers today. Master Black Belt Director for the Safety and Industrial Business Group, Marlene Lopez Ibarra, along with Global Diversity and Inclusion Strategist, Scott Morris, for a conversation on how they've turned their passions into successful, fulfilling careers. So Marlene, Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't we just start with sharing a little bit about yourselves, your background, your career journey, and how you got into your role today. And Marlene, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, thank you for this time, and thank you, Karen. Thank you for Godbus, and thank you to all the participants that are here today. Welcome to my home in home office and really hearing about my life and passion. I am Marlene Lopez Ibarra. I'm currently the Master Black Belt Director for SIBG and PSD. And even though the title sounds a little bit like a ninja, I'm more on the process improvement and trying to understand what things can be made better at 3M all over the company, specifically for app business. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Mexico. I went to an international school for elementary, started working as a camp counselor and team building facilitator, and have an undergrad in marketing, and started my professional corporate life at 3M Mexico in an internship around 2002. I'm currently married to the love of my life. We've been 10 years together. We have a little 4-year-old, Elena. And I left Mexico. I left my mom, my sister, my niece, nephew, friends in 2006 for a 2 to 3 year opportunity in 3M USA. And 15 years later, I'm still here. And hopefully you will hear why by the end of this hour.
Great. Thank you so much. And congratulations. That's so exciting. So you started your career at 3M and have grown the entire time. I love to hear those stories. Well, fantastic. We will come back. Scott, would love to just know a little bit more about you as well.
Well, thank you, Karen. And I echo Marlene. For me, it's so exciting to share this platform with Marlene. I just love her to death. She's one of my favorite leaders in this company. I guess I've been at 3 for 33 years, so I'll give you a condensed version of my story. First and foremost, it's for a young man who grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan, to have been able to experience over 30 countries in this world. All on behalf of 3M. It's been really kind of powerful for me, and a testimony to my parents. They are the ones that really instilled in us to be big, be bold, believe. And I absolutely love that about them. So I'm currently our global diversity and inclusion strategist, also the strategic lead for our 9 ERNs, including being the first man to help set strategy for our women's leadership forum. So this work is really important to me. I will say this, that many folks, when I moved to this role in 2017, said, what's going on? What are you doing? Why are you moving there? Well, this was a part of my plan, and they didn't realize it. So I spent many of my years in a variety of sales functions, from sales management to training, to leading our strategic account talent development for the enterprise. And that's what led me 90% of my time traveling the globe. But what I will say, and being centered here, is I love this topic. This is such an important topic for us to really have clarity around our passions and how our passions can really lead to fruitful opportunities. But I will say this, it's more powerful, more impactful when that passion is aligned to your purpose. And it's also aligned with the direction that the company is going that you work for. So I will leave it there. And I will say one other thing. To me, family's most important. I have 2 amazing young adults, 127, Jared, and then my daughter's at Hampton, and she's a senior. She's going to graduate in 3 years. And so they're the love of my life, and everything that I do is for, frankly, my family and hopefully others.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Scott. And I love that you both have kind of grown your careers through 3M. I think the kind of storyline that happens a lot of times is people think in order to grow, they have to leave, they have to go on to the next company. So talk to me a little bit more about what attracted you to your career, to start your career at 3M, and then ultimately what's kept you there for as long as you've been there. And Scott, I can start with you on this one.
So I would say it's a very interesting story. how I arrived at 3M. I worked, had an internship with a company that was a leading edge company. Consumer companies back then were really, what our high tech companies are today. And I actually came to 3M after having an internship, a scholarship with a job offer, a clear path in terms of how I was going to move up and be a director in 5 years and a VP shortly thereafter at this company, a big company, by the way. And I came to 3M for $15,000 less than that company offered me. And well, it's on record now. I never told my parents that, but anyway, that's the reality. And the reason that I came to 3M, because even then, I felt these sensibilities around family and values, and it resonated with me. And why am I here all these years later? I will say that at least for the last decade, no one tells me what to do. They tell me what we need, but no one tells me what to do. And so I'm given the autonomy to really bring my passion and my purpose to life inside and outside of the company. And so a lot of people will talk about at 3M, it's so diverse, there's so many things that you can do in the company, but that only happens if you're creating value, right? If you're able to create value, quantify the value, people know what you're capable of doing. Mm-hmm. So I would say that I'm here in large measure because I've had the autonomy to create and quantify and continue to build and lift customers, and today our employee workforce. So it's been an incredible ride, and it doesn't feel like 33 years.
Great. And Marlene, what about you? What kind of attracted you to 3M to start, and what has kept you there?
And Karen, I think I probably wasn't as purposeful and planned as Scott when I started, because I was an intern still in undergrad looking for what they call experience. So people around me started working. I'm like, well, maybe I should find an internship. So I can tell you I knew very little about 3M, like most people before they start research for an interview or hear events like today. And almost 20 years later, I'm still here. So what attracted me that day was really the location of the building. It was in a part of Mexico City that was great. When I started doing research, they had this international footprint. And I can say the minute I set foot in the building, the quality of the interview from HR, the one that would be my supervisor, just the kind of questions, and not only about who are you, what's your experience. I mean, when you're an intern still in school, it's not like you can talk about all these experiences, but just how human they made it and how really they were looking for this bright, creative minds. And then after the onboarding week, I thought, this is where I see myself forever. It really has everything. And kind of to what Scott said, or as you were mentioning earlier, Karen, a lot of people search for other companies to keep growing their career. Or you're bored of an industry and you think that to learn more about an industry, you need to branch out. And I feel like a kid in a candy store from day one. When you see the best careers, the best portfolios, markets, segments, you could be here forever and not touch all the opportunities you have.
Well, and I love what you said about them making it human. It was a human experience for you, because I think that a lot of companies could take a page out of that book right now, where they're losing some of that human experience through their recruiting process. So it's fantastic to hear that even 20 years ago, 3M was already doing that. And that's what gave you that feeling to stay. That's great. Okay, so let's talk about what you do at 3M. So what does your workday look like? What kinds of projects are you working on? I think when you think about kind of our audience and who's joining, they're curious to know, what does kind of the sky, what's the limit? what does the sky look like at 3M? So let's talk a little bit more about your work. Marlene, if you'd like to start with this one.
Of course. So I'd say let's divide my days in 70, 20, and 10%. I think 70% of my time in any day is really delivering around projects, team management, really specific activities to my role description. And 20% of my day normally is about learning and participating with others. A lot of it is with meetings with Scott and Ann and the team, a lot around ERN driven, because that's my through others part of the work. And I also think 10% of it is growing myself, reading, learning, digging deeper. I can say there is kind of a schedule, but never a typical day. Some of the projects I'm working on are understanding the root cause of issues that prevent us from delivering the best class to our customers. So as you think of everything that's happening and all you hear, I'm in the center of understanding what could be done better and how can we prepare for the future, understanding how we can better package marketing campaigns by segments and portfolios in a business, and also how do we move the needle in representation at 3M, being a mentee, a mentor, a coach, and also like on every day going through reports and creating slides, creating meaningful touch points, a day with my team, my network. So every day is different, but I try to put it in that 70-20-10.
Love it. Great. And Scott, what about you? Tell us a little bit more about what your typical day looks like and what kind of projects you're working on.
Well, thanks, Karen. I would say what's typical has changed, and it's changed, I think, dramatically in some really positive ways, I think, due to the pandemic. But I would say that my days are a blur. And so I can't even break them down into, it feels like it's 100% everything, right? It is an absolute blur. And, you go meeting to meeting to meeting. But when I think about what I do, it really is around driving initiatives. It's really around, really creating strategy. But what's kind of awesome now is like we built these strategies, really, I would say at their core in 2017 for our employee resource networks, as well as our D&I strategy. Maybe the first one in the company, to be perfectly frank, that's this robust and rich. And now to really take those strategies and to start executing on those through initiatives. A big piece of that, we talked a little bit about our ERNs, and Marlene is the chair of our Latino Research Network. And Marlene, it prefers 70, 30, 10, or whatever you said, Marlene. I would say that's a big chunk of it because I led an ERN at one point. But a big part of this strategy is how can we help amplify the voices of our ERNs to really maximize or optimize the value that they create for the enterprise and elevate their relevance. And that's happened. That's a big piece of it. But the other areas that I work on is really around areas around how can we really drive a more inclusive culture wherever you are. How do we create that deep sense of belonging and start leading more with vulnerability and empathy through some of our initiatives? And there's an initiative that I'm leading for the enterprise right now, which is around allyship, which is a really important driver for us as we look to our future and how we can keep building on our culture of inclusion and drive towards equity. And this goes beyond a module. So what we're doing is we are activating this movement with large group sessions through small group conversations that will carry on throughout next year. So when we think about some of this work isn't easy. Some of this work isn't intuitive. And I would say this, and I say this often, if I was going to run a marathon, I miss my chance. But if I was going to run one, my running group was going to be Marlene and Karen would get together. We would go through this hard work together, right? We would learn and we would share. And that's important. And so when I think about this work around allyship in particular, it's really around making sure that we invite all the voices, all the perspectives, wherever you are in your maturity, right? Whether you're a skeptic, whether you're more in the neutral camp or you're a champion, it's important to create that safe space for people to be vulnerable, to share, to confront their biases, because we all have them. So those are some of the things that I'm driving for the enterprise. That's just one. There's several others, but I know that we are short on time.
No, I love that. And I think I'm hoping that you come out with some type of toolkit or after all is said and done, because like I said, I think there's a lot of companies that could take a page from that book in terms of having kind of those honest, vulnerable conversations with their employee groups. I love it. Great. So we're talking today about passion, how you found your passion. And I think that's something, especially, I think about myself early on in my career, and I was so obsessed with trying to figure out what it was that I was passionate about. And so I'm curious, when you think about your career and how your passions have grown and how you've been able to design a career that you're really excited about, how do you feel like you've done that successfully? And how do you feel like 3M has kind of supported your journey as you've kind of grown your career there? And Marlene, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I think part of it is I was raised Montessori, so thank you, Mom. And from the beginning, I think we need to leave the world a little bit better than we found it. So as I try to find meaning and purpose, I was like, independent of where I am, how do I do a little bit better? If it's a business, a team, my family, my home, no matter where, when, or how. So when you find a company like 3M and the vision is to have product technologies and innovation that improve and advance every home, company, and life, and everybody really believes in it and works on it, passions and career just simply magically align. I was excited when I started in 3M Mexico and improving kids' lives. And I had been a camp counselor before. But then you put an X-care bandage on a kid and then they magically smile. Or I had the opportunity to launch a product and I started creating artwork with kids and then having a fundraiser and giving that money to kids in need. So full circle again. Changing policy in dental with the support of dentists from around the world, and then knowing that you influenced fluoride varnish application in kids 2 years old, and now kids have protected smiles, and the link between mouth health and overall health. So it's really progressing in my career and being able to share knowledge and passions and commitment and finding the leaders of tomorrow and being able to coach them while we fix the biggest challenges of the company. And also knowing that in the company, I have 15% of my time, even if it's beyond 100%, that really encouraged me to do more. So through the LRN influencing where we invest social justice funds, becoming a board member of foundations, impacting the culture in 3M. So it's been an evolving journey, but everything I do think that it aligns to doing something a little bit better.
I love it. And Scott, what about you?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I love this. I love this question because passion is so important to me in my life and how it has guided me. And in fact, 8 years ago, I built a workshop around your purpose, passion, and your promise, and I was doing that around the country. But my passion was really instilled in me at a very young age. And again, it was the way that our parents instilled in us to be the absolute best, to compete to your fullest. But as you do that, bring others with you. And so I was taught at an early age to try to lift others as I rose, as I competed. Don't succeed at the expense of someone else. And those lessons at a very early age led me through my athletic life, led me through my academic life. And I think it manifests in who I am today. A big piece of me and a big part of my purpose is to serve others relentlessly. And that's something that I think shows up. And I used to keep a scorecard every day that those that you had an opportunity to interact with, was there one thing that they could have taken from that engagement that's going to allow them to compete differently? I don't keep score anymore. I did that for several years, but I think that I'm doing that, but hopefully I'm doing it in a bigger and a broader way. So I think your passions are so important. And the thing that I would say is connecting to your purpose is really, really critical, because you can be passionate. And I had a mentoring session with someone 2 days ago, and they weren't really believing totally in themselves and what they're capable of. And they were allowing maybe their background or their experiences and what others might, or where they may perceive those experiences, to make them feel like maybe less than, or maybe they aren't capable of taking on this role. They never saw themselves in that role. And as she started to share, I just asked her, just share with me your walk. And as she shared that walk, I encourage you to write it down, because now you start to look at this beauty and all the richness that you can bring. So it's really important that we understand, as we think about our passions, never lose sight of our personal equity. Never lose sight of that. And don't allow anyone else to limit our beliefs. So those are the things that have guided me. And on a lot of levels, it's why I'm still at 3M. Because I think there is so much potential, so much opportunity for us in this company, as I think that we're in a time of reshaping and building on, our first 100+ years. Is what are we going to be over the next, 100 years or 50 years or 25 years, hopefully some folks can see my size 12 shoes there somewhere in my footprint.
Mhm. I love it. And you know what? I love the idea of keeping a scorecard. I think everybody starts off with really good intentions, but it's very hard to be intentional if you're not tracking yourself. And that is such a great and easy way to be really intentional with your interactions and make sure you're giving as much as you're getting in those. So I love that. I think that everybody should write that one down. Keep a scorecard. Great. So I'm sure, as I mentioned early in my career, I struggled trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do, and I fell into my job. It sounds like, Marlene, you fell into your job a little bit as well. I'm curious for anybody that's on the call that might be at this point in their career where they just aren't sure what they want to do, or they don't know what they want to do next, perhaps. What advice do you have for those individuals struggling to figure out where they want to be professionally?
Karen, who's that go to?
Oh, sorry, Scott.
Okay, we're both.
Yeah,
Marlene, we're so courteous. We don't want to jump over each other. Okay, so for me, I'm going to say it this way. Knowing what you want to do is one of the most difficult things I would say to articulate.
Mhm.
A lot of people, you hear people talk about their careers and they'll act like they knew exactly what they wanted to do. And one of the challenges with identifying one thing, there's a lot of roles that were at 3M that are no longer here.
Mhm.
So that can be a challenge.
Yeah.
So what I've tried to do, I tried to really articulate clearly how wide and how pervasive I want to impact
Mhm.
in areas that I want to create value in. And what I tried to do is understand, where are we challenged? So a lot of the roles that I've been in, there's been a lack of clarity or conjecture around them.
Mhm.
So they were looking for someone that could come in and really create a vision around what that role can look like and how we can create and carve out value. So what I would encourage you to do is, one, think about your passions, think about where your purpose is and really what you want, right? And don't allow external voices to dissuade you if you really are passionate and you really believe that's where you should be going. But I
Mhm.
really think, versus thinking about a specific role, think about how you want to impact. And then as you consider that next opportunity, how is that going to help you move towards the ultimate goal that you've laid out for yourself?
Mhm.
So that is maybe not the most clear answer, the most direct answer, but that to me is an honest answer from my perspective, because if you approach it that way, and then the other piece I will say is network before you're looking for a job. So really look at those folks that have power and have influence, and that will help shape really and help you align, I think, where your passions are.
Mhm.
And so that would be my advice as it relates to looking at that next opportunity.
Great. And Marlene, anything additional to add?
Yes, and I would start by necessarily not thinking, what do you have to do professionally? And I think we still have that stigma of, okay, what are you doing professionally? Maybe there's entrepreneurial, maybe it's staying at being a stay-at-home mom, maybe it's becoming the best reader, blogger. So know that professionally doesn't necessarily have to go by profession. I also think don't necessarily know, where do you want to work? I think it's a little bit to Scott's point about thinking and feeling and what makes you happy or what drives your passion. So when we had coincidentally a session yesterday where Scott and I were participating, and they were talking about these 3 cups: financial security, impact, and expression. So when you're thinking of a company, will the team, the role, the product excite you every morning to wake up because you're going to spend a lot of hours? Will the day and week and year fly if you do it? So when you interview, do you connect with the person on the other side of the table or the screen? When you see their web page or walk a store or walk on the street, do you wow yourself with the great things the company is doing? Think of it as a 3-legged stool,
Mhm.
or at least that's the way I do it. It's like, who's going to be my team or my leader? Who's going to be the product or service or job? And is there something I might learn? So as you think of what do you want to do, maybe you get 3 out of 3 and it's a super strong stool, but at least 2 of the 3, I think it'll continue driving your careers.
I love it. And we talk a lot about this with the Fairy God Boss community too, that sometimes it's not about finding that perfect job. Sometimes it's about finding the right company that aligns to the values, that aligns to what's important to you as an individual. And then you'll find the right job within that organization. So I would love to understand, we talk a lot, got a lot of interest about culture and what does culture look like and how are we able to articulate an authentic culture, right? So if you had to describe the culture at 3M, how would you describe the company's culture?
I definitely say diverse,
Mhm.
always learning, transitioning, open, global, innovative, not to brag, but probably the best and smartest and kindest people I've ever met.
Oh, that's so nice. We're going to have to get a snippet of that and I'll send it to Kyle so he's got it to use too. That's fantastic. Scott, what about you?
Well, I'm not sure if I can add anything to what Marlene said, but what I will say is I believe as I look at our culture over the span of 30 plus years, it is an evolving culture. It's a culture that is being very purposeful in terms of how we are defining that culture, and all the tenets around it is powered by inclusion, right? And so I think that the way that we're being so intentional to really understand all the great things that Marlene said, how our culture gives us a competitive advantage, right? How does our culture allow us to hopefully aspire to be the employer of choice, right? And so how do you take the best parts, the best attributes of our culture and make sure that it's more inclusive, to make sure that it's reaching everyone, whether they're in a plant or production worker or in a sales zone or they're somewhere across the globe. So I love seeing not only the purpose behind it, I love seeing the process, the infrastructure, the investments inside and outside of the company. I like to say that we aren't checking boxes. And as some of the young people might say, our CEO is lit. He really gets it. And I would say that his team gets it. And a game we should play as children was follow the leader. And that's really true. So people emulate what they see. And the key for us now is to make sure that that's cascading to every level of our enterprise.
Well, and as you're talking about being an employer of choice, I think one of the things that we see that 3M does so well is that you've got that inclusivity piece. A lot of companies are trying to absorb the diversity piece right now and have been over the last 18 months, but they haven't put in the infrastructure in place to really be inclusive to those communities once they bring them into their workforce. And we're seeing that very strongly with 3M. So I love to hear from your perspective too, that you see that from kind of top down and from bottom up.
So Karen, if I could just build on what you just said, and it's really important. We didn't start 18 months ago with this. That to me is a critical thing. And when you see the way that we've responded on so many levels, from the pandemic to George Floyd, to AAPI, and all the social things, it was the foundation was in place well before that. And so we didn't even have to pivot. We just expanded, we just accelerated what was already in place. So I think it's important to note that. And some companies, and so many companies are doing great work in this space. But I think something that's really been helpful for us is the fact that we didn't start at 18 months. We started well before that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Great. Well, let's talk about, we've got an interest in the benefits at 3M and what it's like to work there. Really tactical question. So what benefits have you taken advantage of personally as employees of 3M over your time there? What are some of the perks that you could expect to see if you were to join 3M as a new employee? And Marlene, maybe we'll start with you on this one.
So, I mean, we start from, I think it's a competitive salary. I always tell people, don't see only the salary, see the full package. I think we have great healthcare, dental, vision, When you say what have I used, I think an amazing parental leave, probably one of the best I've seen and compared with friends around the Twin Cities, around the US and around the world. Also that one company gives you the opportunity to change your career in 180 degrees without changing companies, perks and tenure. So we have the work your way, we have flexibility, leadership opportunities and learning opportunities literally every single day. So I had Elena in February 2017 and didn't come back till after mid-July into a new role. So for me, that was fantastic bonding time that I would have taken in a heartbeat. And it doesn't matter if it's the mom, the dad, it's simply a parental leave. And even if you're adopting kids, there's a very similar situation. I have to say 3M sponsored my MBA. I'm currently in a leadership way course to learn more about me, my leadership style, and continue growing my journey, everyday mentorship. So I think it's really a complete package of financially savvy, heart savvy, brain savvy, and they're trying to develop all of us as future leaders and contributors.
Love that. Scott, anything additional to add?
I'll just add a couple of points. Marlene made some really, I think, phenomenal ones. For me, starting out, it was the company car when I was in sales. I mean, I had these aspirations of the kind of car I was going to have when I graduated from college, and it was a Ford Taurus. I just took what I had, right? The other thing is, and this is a benefit that's unique because of the global nature of the company. It's to have it. It is a benefit. It is. It's something that you have to sacrifice too. But to travel to over 30 countries in 3.5 years, and some 10 times, and to do it, in at least 4 or 5-star hotels. So I'm traveling outside the United States, and to have the opportunity to meet so many brilliant people from so many different cultures, to have the opportunity, even though they say, be careful walking around. Well, I walked around everywhere I was on my own, exploring the people, language barriers and everything, but they received me wherever I went. And so that's a benefit that I don't think that we can minimize, because what it does, you can be the most open person. It widens and it expands that. And frankly, our ERNs, with all the diversity there, that helps me because I miss immersing myself in various cultures. So I would say that from my perspective, that's something that's really important. And we didn't get into medical and all the other things. The last thing I will say about it, because Anna and I, our brilliant chief diversity officer, and I had a conversation with one of our VPs in the benefit space. There's a lot of benefits that we don't take advantage of. And so we're going to start having that conversation with our ERNs so that they can help inform, some of the things that we do from that standpoint. So I think it's important to bring that forward as well.
Great. I love that. It's an intangible that I think that's hard to put the value on when you think about the level of interaction that you get with people from all across the world. That's incredible. So on that same thread, another question that we often get asked, particularly I think for women too, is they start thinking about families and what does that look like as a primary caretaker. How are you finding, or how have you found at 3M to manage kind of that balance between your work life, your home life, your family life, and kind of keep all of those balls in the air? And Scott, I know you have 2 adult children. Marlene, you've got a little one. So I would love both of your perspectives on kind of what that looks like as both of you have kind of progressed your career with 3M. And maybe I'll start with Marlene. Sorry, I'll try to direct them.
Yes. So I'd say I've been able to move this balance depending on the stage of life and desires. And Karen, you mentioned like now as a mom, and before maybe just as a girlfriend, and before as a single person as you move around. So I can say when I started as a 3M as a student and working, I was able to navigate both because you can have these open conversations with your supervisor. When I became in an international role, I wanted to be on the road, learning from customers, to what Scott said before, all the time. I had the opportunity to take around the world trips or be on the road for 3 weeks, of a month. So that was fantastic for me because that's what I wanted at the time. So as I became a mom, I wanted a role specifically that included less travel. So at 3M, I've been able to say, I need this flexibility, I need this kind of role. I'm willing to relocate, not relocate. I'm willing to travel, not travel. So that's specifically in the roles as we apply for them. And even now with the pandemic, they say work your way. Within the US, it's easier, but I still have the opportunity to potentially be in Mexico for a couple of weeks and still be working. So I think the flexibility and the work your way has definitely continued to evolve. And now with COVID and the new ways of working, it's been very successful to balance them all.
Great. And Scott, anything additional to add?
Yeah, I guess what I would say, and Marlene kind of, I think, captured this, is the ability to balance work and your personal life. It varies, and sometimes impeccably, and sometimes really poor. And I would say the first 2/3 of my career, I would say really well, never missing, even coaching my kids in their sports, never missing an activity ever. And then you come into a role like the one I talked about that was so beneficial to be able to travel the way that I was traveling. Well, that role was supposed to be 25%. And due to some circumstances, it became like 90 to 95%. And so I missed my daughter's entire sophomore year of high school, if you really want to be honest and frank. And that's tough. That's hard. No matter how you try to balance it, you could not balance it. You could not equalize it, right? And so those are some of the trade-offs that are made. But if you're in a role like that, you have to figure out a way to be in it and out. And that was supposed to be longer. And I was out in 13 months because I did what we needed to do. And then this opportunity came along, and I haven't traveled really since 2017. So I think that it's really around circumstance, and you do the best that you can. But there are certain situations that if it gets out of alignment, you have to take that deep breath and say, you know what, this isn't working for me. This isn't working for my family. And then you would hope that you would have support to make that transition that's best for you and your family.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to comment. The confidence that you had to be able to say, this isn't going to work for me. I think that also attests as a testament to the culture at 3M to say, it started off as the right role. It started off as what I thought I wanted, and what it's evolved to is not quite there. So I think that's great advice. So we've got questions coming in. Just a reminder, you can submit questions in the Q&A section below. You can identify as yourself or anonymous. We'll get to these in just a minute. We've got a couple more questions to go through. So talk to me, I think the concern, or maybe the fear that people have when they think about changing careers is, what if I fail? What if I don't know how to do it? What if the grass isn't greener? So what do you think, if you had to describe traits or characteristics that somebody would need to be really successful at 3M at the company, what advice would you give? So Scott, we'll start with you.
Well, the thing I would say around having a fear of failure, lacking in confidence. I'm not saying cocky, but lacking in confidence. It's really important that you get in tune with really who you are and what your differentiated strengths are. And what I like to when I'm coaching someone or mentoring someone, the question I pose to them is, if they're real clear with what they want to do or how they want to impact, how is that fear of failure an enabler that's going to help them get there? How is that lack of confidence going to help them get there? And so there's some things that we typically do, getting all the way down to basically what is their personal promise, right? And that's important, because once you start to, I think, take that step back and evaluate yourself the way maybe you evaluate other people, it really, I think, gives you that confidence to really move forward, to take those next steps. And it's something that I think about quite a bit, because I wrote a poem. I don't write letters to myself. I wrote a poem When I wrote lots of poems, but one specifically to myself when I was 25. And when I think about that, it was so many questions, so little time. And at the end of it is, as you do all of these things, as you explore this world, what's worthy, right? What's worthy of your time, your investments, your love, your heart, your head. And if you can't rationalize that, then that's an issue. But when you can rationalize those things, I say, take bold action, be curious, right? Be bold and take action on your differentiated skills and strengths, right? And also take bold and purposeful action around areas where you really feel like you can create value in a different way. So that's how I would respond to that. It's a great question, and I would love to hear what Marlene has to say about it.
Me too.
Yes, and
Marlene.
I think as skills or traits, and you said it, Scott, I think is just being curious learners. If you can prioritize and you can strategize, if you can execute, we can always show you that. But if you're willing to learn, it doesn't matter what they throw at you. And I mean, I'm far from a dentist, and after 2 years running the oral care business, I have certificates that say Dr. Marlene, and my family would call me with a toothache. I'm like, well, go to the dentist. I'm just a business manager. But you can learn anything and everything. And it goes back to the initial question of when you're working with the smartest people and they're the coolest people, and nothing is kept to yourselves. It doesn't matter if you're the intern or the CEO. I can call Scott any day and ask him anything, and he'll find me the answer. And when you have that same thing with the lab, and you can spend the whole day in the lab learning ins and outs and the secret sauce of absolutely every product, you become part of it. And that's the exciting part. So if you have like this little part of geek inside you and you're a curious learner, I think you're going to have a very successful career at 3M and reinvent and reinvent and reinvent yourself.
And that kind of feeds into the next question that I have, because I think one of the things, curiosity, that sounds like the theme between the two of you is that with curiosity, you can be successful. A lot of Fairy Godboss community looks for or have expressed interest in wanting to know really solid career development paths. Like, what does it look like? If I start today as an intern, where will I go? And they want to be able to visualize themselves. So if you had to describe career pathing and in your career paths, because I know they've kind of gone lots of different directions, how would you describe that process at 3M, and how have you been successful in kind of moving around the organization?
I think career pathing at 3M, you can choose. You can kind of those books of choose your own adventure. So if you want to continue swimming, go to page 3. If you want to learn how to fly, go to page 7. So everything is in the system. Like everything, if you have time and you look around, you'll find it. But every single role in the company has a role charter that says, this is what you're going to be owning, vetoing. This is what you're going to be responsible. This is who reports to you. These are the basic skills you need. These are the desired skills that you're going to learn. So when you have time and say, with the limited or vast knowledge that I have of what excites me and what my passions are, I think I want something that involves a team. I think something that involves a fast moving business or a slow moving business. And then you can pretty much print everything, put it on your wall and start playing. Where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? But when you know that the company gives you visibility for every single role 24/7, you can go in the system and see what's out there. It's really whatever you want to do with your career. And that's something that they encourage. It's not where does your boss want you? Where does your supervisor want you? It's really you are responsible for your development and your career. So I've seen 180-degree changes. I've seen people in business go to the lab and lab go to business, in HR and become super successful business managers. So you can literally pick your own adventure career.
I love it. And Scott, anything additional to add?
Well, what I would say, Marlene nails this question. But I will also say that based on that, it can be hard, right? So it can be hard to break out of a traditional pathway. So for example, coming through sales, you do a great job. Then 3.5 years for me, they want me to come into marketing. I was living in Atlanta, married, a Floridian, did not want to move to Minnesota. So, your pathway there is to come into maybe sales training or marketing roles. I came into sales training. that was a connection to management, going to sales management. But my trainer said, the lead trainer said, no, Scott, we're keeping you here in training for 5 years. I'm like, are you kidding me? What are you talking about? But the point that I'm making is that there are certain transition roles. So Marlene leads black belts as the master black belt. And that is a great way, if you're in the lab, if you have some aspirations. And I coach one of my mentees, who's one of our most brilliant scientists. I said, don't take this wrong, but no one would realize you're a scientist because you can just talk to people in such plain language. And so he came in as a black belt. Now he's a director, business director. So there are certain roles that allow you to make transitions. I don't know how many people have moved from sales management, training and development, strategic account talent development into D&I. But if you've been purposeful and you have a record of creating value in those spaces, then people will seek you out and you have a better opportunity. So it's not super easy, but then it goes back to that word that we talked about earlier. It's around being intentional. It's around really understanding how can I network outside of my upline, which is really important. So how do I network beyond my boss's boss, and the lab that I actually work in? So how do I create more relevance, and how do I create more value across the enterprise into the community? So when you start doing that, then I think what all you're doing is you're building up your body of work to really be able to do what Marlene said, to really write your own ticket in terms of where you go and how you get there.
Great. Now we've got a couple more minutes and we've got quite a few questions coming in. So I want to make sure I have one more question selfishly that I'm curious to know, and then we'll go to the audience Q&A. So, we hear often as well from our community members that it's really important to see women at the helm of businesses. They want to know that somebody has done it before them, that there is that path there. So how have you both found role models? You talk about finding networking outside of your upline and just networking in general. How have you been successful in doing that and identifying mentors at the companies too? Scott, you've talked a lot about being a mentor now at this point in your career, but as you were growing, how did you find mentors at 3M? And Scott, I'll start with you and then I'll go back to
you. Okay. Thank you. So this question is a really good question. And it's one for me that it's been one-sided. I probably have over 50 people that I mentor today. And the mentors that I've had in the company are no longer at the company. And it's interesting because typically there was some dual mentorship that was going on, even though that they were executives. And I can think about Kim Price, the amazing Kimberly Price, and then Cheryl Burrell. So those were the two mentors that I would say that I've had throughout my career at 3M. And then my sister is another person that I would consider a mentor to me. And the beauty of her mentorship is the fact that she rose to a chief HR officer in multiple companies and retired at 50, retired the first time at 42. but to have someone like that I could speak with, that was, a leading persona in the United States and across the globe was really important. Marlene talked about dentistry. My brother is a phenomenal dentist, and he has more than his dentist practice. But being able to bounce things off of him, and leading a small business very successfully. So for me, it kind of starts with my family and close knit. I've been offered to have mentors at 3M in the past, but for me, it was important because I've been here so long to make sure that I had an external perspective. That external perspective has helped, in my opinion, keep me vibrant, keep me fresh, keep my perspective fresh, and not maybe buy into some things. If you've been at any place a really long time, you can start to cement maybe your ideas and your perspective and your vision.
Mhm. Well, and there's something about family too that just helps keep you grounded, I think,
Yeah.
or in my perspective, at least I'm the same way with my older brother. But he helps just keep me level all the time, which
Absolutely.
I think is great. Marlene, what about you in terms of women leaders at 3M and identifying mentors at the company?
I think I've read, I've heard, if you can't see it, it's harder to be it. So I can tell you I found amazing female role models every single day in every role, every function, in every continent at 3M. And to Scott's point, some have retired, like Polly Foss and Pauline Allison and Mary Jo Abler, that created growth platforms and amazing teams and believed in me very early in my career. And then our fearless leader, Anna Nair, Chief Diversity Officer, knowing that, and we were partner in an official partner, a mentorship, a relationship through the LRN. And I was like, this lawyer is going to be my mentor. What am I going to do? And then she's the Chief Diversity Officer. And now I don't know what my life would be without her. Silvia Perez, our president for a business that started, and she started in the lab and then became a business manager and has been all over, and just how she conducts herself and how she has mentors and mentees and gives me the best books to read. Judith Garcia, who's always there to support me. Milena Oliveira, our chief marketing officer in TBG, and how she's been able to shape her career and have kids and go back. And even as a model of, she is, you could say, the leading spouse, and how the husband has been a strong power for her to continue growing. To Carola Carrera, a PhD in dentistry, started in Chile and now is working on nanoparticles. Mosh DePaul, a group president that's been coincidentally in pivotal moments in my career. Zoe, our HRSVP, always with an open door. Denise Rutherford, Senior Vice President of Brand. I could give you a list of maybe till 4 p.m. And for me, it's all about, I can even tell you the most recently, because you always have this, well, yes, but they were all American, or yes, but they were international. And I can tell you, I just telling you, I get goosebumps. We recently have a newly appointed Senior Vice President of Brand and Strategy, Karina Chavez, who started her career in 3M Mexico. So I'm super proud to say that 3M has amazing females and inspirational leaders. And we've seen them grow, we've seen them come in, and the list could go on and on and on.
Sure could.
I love that. I love it. And I love that you've got them all too. I mean, that just shows like how
I should write the chat of all the lists, and then everybody can ping them on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, great. So we've got about 5 minutes left, and we've got questions coming in from the audience. So one of the first questions is we've talked a lot about networking. And so this individual says, can you share any effective tactics you use to grow and nurture your network? And would you be willing to share an example of how your network has helped you align your passion to your career path and how you can kind of lean on those people? So Scott or Marlene, if either of you want to take that one.
I would say that the word network, and maybe because English, it's still a second language, I see network, and I still see the word work loud and clear. So I tell people, start your network through your work. It's great to have random coffee chats, and maybe it's more culturally, but I would feel uncomfortable just saying, hey, Scott, can I have 30 minutes of your time? Out of the blue. They're so nice at 3M that they would say yes, but I think there's this value of, Scott, can I share my work with you? Can you give me input? So your initial network points should be showing who you are and receiving feedback of things that you're doing naturally, going back to the 70-20-10. So if I can show you my work, then probably you're going to be more inclined to talk about my trades, the way I work, the way that I analyze, the way I present, the way I communicate. And then from there, once you have that touch point, don't release it. I say it's a little bit like a spider web, also like the networking, and maybe somebody retires and you drop that point, but you still have to be being the little busy spider, creating your network every single day, because you don't know when something's going to release or someone's going to be able to talk about you. But network through your work. That's the beginning.
Yeah.
Great. Anything additional, Scott?
Well, I think that some roles are kind of built-in networking roles, and then some aren't. And when they aren't, it's important, I think, to be real intentional, frankly, to be strategic with that. It's important to understand the organization. And when you think about where you want to go, you need to know that when you're, going to meet with someone to have a good reason.
Mhm.
But it's important to also know who has power, who has influence. What do you want to come out of that meeting? It could be as simple as getting at someone else that you can connect to,
Mhm.
right? And so I think if you approach it with some strategy, with some purpose, understand the outcomes that you really want to drive, the information that you want to get out of that meeting, and then also, what do you want to leave with that individual,
Mhm.
right? So what impression or perception did they take away from that engagement with you? Because Marlene's right, everyone at 3M will give you with a big smile on their face an opportunity to meet with them at least once, right? Is what do you do with that time that you have with them? I think it's the important thing.
Great. So another question that came in is, it sounds like this individual is trying to make a career move. And so she says, I'm currently in a legal position and I want to move into a DE&I role, but I'm having trouble getting that opportunity in my current company. So what is your advice on how to convince others to understand your passion and see the value that you can bring into a role if maybe your skill set isn't immediately transferable?
Yeah, so I'll start with that. Marlene spoke about a leader that I am so fortunate, particularly at this stage in my career, to work for, and that's Ananiah. And was a trial lawyer, a defense attorney, federal prosecutor. Um, she's leading D&I at 3M now. And so the thing that I would challenge there is she didn't come in at a low level. She's the chief diversity officer at 3M. So what I would encourage you to do is think about your walk, think about your experiences, think about where you invest your time. Think about how you invest in others. Think about how you lift others. Think about maybe work that you do in the community. Think about how strategic are you. So these are things that I feel matter.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I would say is, where's your heart? Do you lead with empathy?
Mm-hmm.
If you lead with empathy, you know what? I think that you can help inspire others. And once someone activates their heart, then their head follows.
Mm-hmm.
So I say, do not have limiting beliefs, and your skills will come through.
And if they're not giving you the opportunity, do it in your spare time,
That's
become a
right.
part of an employee resource network, then become the chair of an employee resource network.
Absolutely.
And before you're doing it in your legal role, you're changing the culture and you're impacting, and they're going to be like, maybe we should hire her in the DEI structure.
Yep.
That's a
Definitely.
great point, Marlene, because a lot of the work that Ann was doing was the pro bono work that she was doing, and also involved in the legal D&I team and doing a lot of great transformational work there. Karen, if I could just add one thing, because it really has sparked something in my head. When a person looks at that next opportunity, some might say, I want a role that I'm able to interact with more people, maybe a more people focused role, or a role when I can interact and create value for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I would say is, when you look at those roles, also think about what else can you do outside of that role.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can get a lot of that same gratification by connecting with nonprofit organizations. To Marlene's point, getting engaged with an ERN, becoming an inclusion leader, joining an inclusion team. There are so many other ways that you can kind of light that fire, right? And exercise that passion beyond the actual role that you're in, but also think about how those experiences are going to help prepare you
Mm-hmm.
for those next talent pipelines that you want to be a part of.
Definitely. Well, we are right up on time. Scott, Marlene, thank you both so much. I'm so sorry that we didn't get to all the questions today, but it was a fantastic conversation. If you are in the audience and you're interested in careers at 3M, please be sure to visit the fairygodboss.com/3M site. You can learn more about their organization. You can see all of their open job postings on the page. And again, thank you both so much for your time. We really appreciate it.